Hey, this is Guy, and it is officially off-season time for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that being said, we have a lot of things to discuss, starting off with the firing of Lou Anaromou. He was fired coming off of a disaster defensive season. We're also going to be talking about how the Bengals finished off their season strong in the right way, the way we all wanted them to, and how they stayed alive all the way to the final weekend of the regular season. And off-season questions that are going to be answered in the coming days, weeks, and months, along with the defensive coordinator search, where the Bengals might have their guy already. So with that being said, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching. This is Guy. Hey, this is Guy. First off, we're going to be talking about how the Cincinnati Bengals ended off their season on a strong note. 5-game win streak with wins over Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver Broncos, which is probably the biggest win of the year, and Pittsburgh, their first win in Pittsburgh since 2022. They finished off their season on the right note, just like we all wanted and hoped, and kept themselves alive for that final playoff spot where the Bengals were once sitting at a 4-8 record and nobody really expected them to be at that position. So keeping themselves alive was definitely something great to see. The Bengals did not give up, knowing that every single week in and week out, was going to be an elimination week for them. You know, going into that Dallas game, they lose and they are out at week 14, sitting at a 4-9 record, which they did not. They got the big win on Monday Night Football. Then they bounced. Then they went into Tennessee. It was a rough game. They were multiple turnovers, but Joe Burrow and T. Higgins ultimately delivered in that game, along with Jamar Chase, who had a quiet near 100-yard game. And then they go to Cincinnati and play Cleveland, where it was a 24-6 dominating win for the Bengals. But they dominated that game where Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both had a touchdown. And then the Denver Broncos game, which is arguably the biggest game of the season, where T. Higgins showed why he is a part of this franchise that should be for a very, very long time. He had 3 touchdowns and a statement game for Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati Bengals, where A, statement for Joe Burrow's MVP case was made. B, T. Higgins showed why he needs to be part of this organization for time and time again. And then on Saturday Night Football, Week 18, the Bengals took care of business in Pittsburgh, where Joe Burrow delivered to Jamar Chase on the first drive and was their only scoring drive. After that, it was defensive battle and a turnover battle for both teams, where the Bengals ultimately got the job done 19-17. So like I said, they finished off their season on a strong note, and one thing that improved and led to finishing off on a 5-game win streak was the defense improving from the past weeks. They struggled all season, and I mean all season. I'm not talking about I'm not saying they did great this 5-game stretch, but they did a lot better than they did earlier in the season. The last time we really saw the Bengals defense at the worst is when they played Pittsburgh that one game. It was 44-38. I think it was week 13. Coming off a bye week, the Bengals let the Pittsburgh Steelers score 44 points. And that was really where everything kind of just hit rock bottom for the Bengals. Nobody expected them to even be in contention for that final playoff spot. And they improved, but not enough. With that being said, defense coordinator Lou Anaromou was fired a couple of days after the regular season, and he is now the new defense coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. But the Bengals may have his replacement already. Al Golden, the current defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, he is currently being headlined as the favorite to be the new Bengals defensive coordinator. And he has been part of this Bengals organization before, so it makes plenty of sense. But it's a good move. It's an understandable move. I'm not too mad at it. That's part of the questions that are in the offseason. One big question is, will T. Higgins come back? He had a career year when it comes to touchdowns. He had 10, and I believe he had 911 yards and 73 receptions. The Denver Broncos game just showed why he is a big part of this franchise and this organization and these three. When it comes to Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, he had in the Denver Broncos game, he had 3 touchdowns. It was a statement game. Like I said, I think he might have had 148 yards or more. It was a statement game, and the Bengals kept themselves alive and made it and showed the league that they should be scared if they got into the playoffs, which obviously they didn't. But T. Higgins, that game, showed why he needs to be a vocal part of this team going on forward. And so, can the Bengals retain T. Higgins? That is a big question. Me personally, I believe they do. They cannot afford to let a guy like that walk. Joe Burrow has expressed that if they let him walk, he will be very disappointed in the front office. And he has also expressed that he expects to be with T. Higgins for most, if not his whole entirety of his career. So the Bengals, that is a big question. That is mainly the headline of this Bengals offseason. this is going to be arguably the biggest offseason in franchise history when it comes to Jamar Chase, who is looking for a big contract, and he proved why he deserves it. He had a triple crown, and if those of you wondering what a triple crown receiver is, he's the sixth NFL receiver to ever do it. It is where you lead the league in NFL in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. He had 127 receptions, 1,708 yards, and 17 touchdowns in 17 games. And this is all coming off of an offseason full of drama last year when it comes to Jamar Chase and his contract. He held out for the entirety of for most of the training camp, if not the entire thing, and wasn't even sure if he was going to play in week 1. It was a question mark. He did all this with no team offseason workouts, no nothing, none of that. He did the unthinkable. Triple crown receiver on his rookie contract. Not only did he just prove that he's the best wide receiver in the league, he just proved why the Bengals should have just paid him this offseason when they refused to. Now he's going to cost a lot more. It is without a doubt that the deal is going to get done. It's just a matter of when. And will it be around the same time T. Higgins gets his deal, if he gets one? And along with offseason questions, it's change. What other change needs to happen to make sure that a season like this doesn't happen again? And what I mean by that is what needs to happen on the front office with free agency. They had a lot of big free agent signings at the time, we thought, when it comes to Sheldon Rankings and Geno Stone. Geno Stone, who did improve throughout the season. He did get a couple of interceptions towards the end of the year. But he did improve, which prior to that, if he didn't do that, I believe he would have gotten cut this offseason along with Sheldon Rankings, who only appeared in very little games. He didn't do nothing when he was out there. He only had 1 sack, if I can remember correctly. It was against the Browns in Week 7. More offseason moves need to happen to make sure that this team can go all the way to the mountaintop. You have an elite guy like Joe Burrow. He has played lights out. He played lights out all season long. MVP season, it was a historic season. And this Bengals team had the league leader in passing touchdowns, passing yards, the league leader in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, and receptions, and the league leader in sacks, which, mind you, this is the first team in NFL history to ever have all three of those on the same team, but it doesn't matter because they missed the playoffs. So what can you do to make sure a season like this doesn't happen again? Team-wise, individual-wise, you could say Joe Burrow is obviously great, and Jamar Chase is great, and Trey Hendrickson is great, but they express that none of those stats and accolades matter when you don't get there as a team, when you don't get there together. What can the Bengals do? I do believe that they will make moves when it comes to the offensive line. What else can they do on that offensive line? Will they go after somebody in free agency? Will they attack the draft on the offensive line? Those are the questions, along with the defensive line. Defensive line was an issue. They had nobody else aside from Trey Hendrickson pressuring the quarterback on the other side of the ball. Joseph Ossai had his moments. I believe he finished the year maybe with 5 or 6 sacks. Joseph Ossai, definitely somebody that the Bengals would like to retain this offseason. But still, you need somebody on the other side of Trey Hendrickson to get pressure and allow Trey Hendrickson to get some pressure off of him so he doesn't have to do so much. So with that being said, there was a lot going that we went over in this video. Questions, along with questions in the offseason that will be answered here soon. The main highlight question is, will T. Higgins come back? Did we see his final season in stripes? We also talked about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and their historic seasons, along with Trey Hendrickson, and how they finished off the season. And we also talked about Al Golden and how he is now the potential and likely defensive coordinator, and Lou Anaromou is out. Those are the things we went over in this video. Hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching. This is your Cincy Guy.